My first spring when I was hired, and it was the practices were at 6 a.m. So we could get, we had to set up the nets in the practice gym in the arena and then get them down before basketball. And I didn't question it. It was like, this is what you had to do. And, the players were so good at setting up nets. I'm going to tell you right now, our current players have no idea how to set up nets.
I know.
This is the Leave It Better podcast, powered by the Side Out Foundation. Here's your host, Hall of Fame coach, Janice Kruger.
Welcome to the Leave It Better podcast. Today, we're honored to have the extraordinary volleyball coach, Mary Wise, here to talk about many things about volleyball and life. Her extraordinary 34-year tenure as head coach at the University of Florida as the Florida Gators. Mary has built one of the most storied programs in NCAA history. She's had over 1,000, I think it's 1,068, but I'm not 100% sure. Mary is the winningest female coach in Division I volleyball history, ranks 4th overall in Division I coaches. She had a career winning percentage of like 834. Now, for those of you hitting balls or hitting anywhere, that's pretty extraordinary. Places are among the most successful volleyball coaches in the NCAA divisions. Mary's Gators have made 8 NCAA Final Four appearances, won 25 SEC championships, and mind you, 18 of those were consecutive, and qualified for 34 straight NCAA tournaments, produced a boatload of All-Americans. Above all, her statistics of winning, she has been a trailblazer for volleyball coaching, women's coaching, Division I head coach, started at year 21. She was 21 years old, and I had a nice conversation yesterday with Carol Dewey about your beginnings. I was digging in deep, which I had a blast talking to her. First female coach to appear in multiple national championships. And in 2006, USA Volleyball honored you as an all-time great coach. Mary's successes have not only been on the court, but they've also been in academic success for all of her players. 290 SEC academic honor roll accolades. And today we're going to hear a little bit about Mary and her volleyball career, her life career. And we're so happy to have you here because we believe in your career's work. You definitely left it better.
Thank you, Janice.
Yeah, thanks for being on the show, Mary.
It's a pleasure. You sat there, you rattled off those numbers, and I had no idea. I hadn't paid attention. You're in the grind. You're not paying attention to the big picture. So that was interesting at the very least.
At the very least, yes. I mean, the success. Let's talk about that for just a second, like that kind of success. Well, wait, I'm going to back up. So we're going to talk a little bit about your beginnings and what they saw in this young, I guess, extrovert, funny, competitive young woman of the 70s, late 70s, and getting that first job. Also, we're going to talk about maybe some challenges along the way in your life and your success there at Florida, and maybe some recommendations for those that are out there wanting to get into coaching and where we are today, which is fun, right? Yeah, we might not want to talk about that a whole lot, but so let's talk about the beginning. Carol Dewey, who was your coach at Purdue, said that she, in recruiting you, and I think you were one of the first big scholarship people there, and she talked money with me, but she goes, we probably don't want to mention that. And so we won't. But she said you were recruited because of your strong leadership. Like people had pointed you out and said, listen, here's a great athlete, tremendous leg power, I'm hearing that you had, and that you were just an amazing leader and someone you would want in your program. I never had a chance to meet Carol until our conversation yesterday. That was the first conversation I've ever had. What a treasure. I love that.
Amazing, amazing woman who truly was a pioneer, because Carol at Purdue saw before, maybe Terry Liskevich at Pacific would, maybe Chuck Irby at USC, but Kathy would have been right amongst that group of seeing women's volleyball as a potential revenue producing sport. It's just, she was ahead of her time. And so creative. So to the point about being recruited, I mean, that was the break. To get where you have to have a lucky break. There's no way I would have gotten, step by step without a number of people. And first off would have been Carol. In the description, you left off unskilled. Because I was clearly an unskilled volleyball player, and even less an unskilled setter, because I didn't set in high school. What I was back at that time, Janice, you can appreciate this, is because there was no travel volleyball, there was no club volleyball, you got to play multiple sports. And so I was very fortunate. Volleyball was it was sort of a late pickup, because I was bored in the fall. And so I came to volleyball so late. I was so poorly skilled. But I only got to Purdue because it was, because of the monies they put in that program that otherwise I was, growing up in the Chicago area, I was going to stay in state because that's all my family could afford. So that amount of money allowed me to go to Purdue. The piece about Carol and her creativity and her belief in the sport, in women athletes, and growing not just players, but people. I mean, I couldn't have asked for a better mentor. And early in my coaching, because you recognize I was really young, could argue too young, but it was a different time, different era.
Different time, yes.
If I literally had in the back of my mind, what would Carol do?
Oh.
When stuff is coming at you in coaching, the stuff that you're not prepared for, my go-to was, what would Carol do in this moment? And her compassion, her thoughtfulness, those were all traits. We're wired very different. I also knew that I couldn't be her in the practice setting or on the bench. She's much calmer, easygoing than she would be what I aspired to, but I never really got. So in the very beginning, I was so blessed to have been recruited by Carol, mentored by Carol, and supported by her throughout my entire career.
Yeah. Yeah. I was doing a lot of reading before I had the phone call with her, because I knew of the name. I had heard of all these amazing things, but I didn't know enough. And we probably talked for about an hour. She has an interesting beginning too, of how she learned the game, being a field hockey and a basketball player, and studying German, going overseas to, I don't know if she was teaching then, and learning how to play volleyball, Olympic volleyball style, overseas, and then coming back, right?
Yeah, but she too came to the sport late.
Yeah.
But having to learn it later in life, like maybe that made her a better teacher of the sport.
Yeah. Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. She talked about your setter training, and she goes, those legs, like her legs were so strong. She could get down and throw that ball back set way up there. And I'm trying to picture it. I was looking everywhere to see if I could find photos of you.
Oh, I'm so glad you did it. I did run into a photo that I actually, and I have stepped away from social media, actually, not just recently, but for other reasons. But I found a photo of Carol and I did post it before the national championship. And I wanted to recognize what was happening in the moment. We were about to have our first female head coach win a national championship. And so I posted the picture of me and Carol. So here I am in college, and it is a throwback, but I wanted to see, how far we've come and how proud I was for that moment. and truly am. And Janice, you too. I mean, there's a long list of women that coached prior to this moment where Katie and Danny were in the national championship.
Yeah. Yeah. So amazing. I think we may have run across that picture. I'm going to see if I can find it. We're going to stick it in this when we go.
You don't have to. You don't have to.
Let's chat just a little bit. Iowa State, you were beginner. This is like you're the head coach. You're thinking about things with what Carol might do. Do you remember any of the challenges besides many at that time? I mean, it was a different time in volleyball, for sure, that were just stuck in your mind about that particular experience and being in college athletics at that time.
Yeah, I'm just so grateful I didn't get anybody hurt or maimed. I was so young and inexperienced. I did turn 22 before the first match.
Okay.
But I truly spent so much energy trying to be someone I really like. I spent so much energy trying to separate myself from the players.
Close age.
I mean, there were players that were, right in my same age, and I was just a year older than them, and I had to be. I think though that gave me that. Instilled in me at that moment, not in the moment, like as I was going through it, those 4 years at Iowa State, is you can't fake it in coaching because athletes are going to see right through it. And I got to believe, I've never coached men, but I do know women, and women athletes will definitely see through it. And so once I didn't come to it, it was subconscious. I can't say it was that mindful because I just wasn't that smart or mature. But once I started to be my authentic self, I became my best self. And so as I was going through that tenure at Iowa State, and I stopped trying to play this, mature experience. I had no experience. All I had was a passion for the game. And I wanted to make it a positive experience for them, for those players. And, it was, as you said, it was a different era. We're driving the vans and we're playing those I had no business. I have no business now or then driving vans, after long weekends of competition and all of it. That's why I said, I'm just so grateful that I didn't make a major mistake, but I think my protection I go back to what I said earlier. My protection is who my mentor was in Carol and how Carol treated others, not just the players, but the support staff and the people, the others. And I really tried to carry that throughout my entire career.
Yeah. I think at that time, I'm sure it's happening now too. Maybe it's just not as easy to see, but you did have time to be able to feel and experience that kind of communication connection with people. That was so special.
Yeah, because it took a village.
Yeah.
And, when I was hired at Iowa State, I was also teaching classes. So you taught classes and then you coached, and the office was shared with the gymnastics coach. And, we weren't on our separate islands like we are now in athletics.
Mm-hmm. True.
It's I think especially the Power 4 school, Power 5 schools. It's so different now.
Yeah.
In that way.
I've only been to your campus one time in Florida, and I just remember it being kind of big, and I'm not sure I even got the full sense of it there. But you guys are pretty well spread out. Do you get to see other coaches, other athletes get to connect with each other?
In the mid 90s, because when I took the job, volleyball did not have we did not have a place to practice. We were kind of a nomad team. My first spring when I was hired, and the practices were at 6 a.m. So we could, we had to set up the nets in the practice gym in the arena, and then get them down before basketball. And I didn't question it. It was like, this is what you had to do. And, the players were so good at setting up nets. I'm going to tell you right now, our current players have no idea how to set up nets.
I know.
And so, but back in the day, they were great at it. So, in the mid 90s, they built, we finally had our own practice facility. And with that became the offices it went baseball, volleyball, soccer, lacrosse, softball, and men's and women's track and field. And we were all in the same building. And during that time, our soccer coach, the phenomenal Becky Burley, who has since retired, but a national championship Hall of Fame soccer coach, she was the connector in our department. And every athletic department needs a connector. Yeah. She was a sharer of information. She brought people together and still does that. And there was so much collaboration and camaraderie and all. But then as time went on, baseball got a separate facility across campus. Then softball, lacrosse did too. Lastly, it was soccer. So the only ones left in that whole area, track and field and volleyball.
Wow. Yeah.
And we lost so much of that in the separation. But you asked about the athletes. I think at Florida, what they have done that has helped so much, the two places where the athletes spend the most time outside of training, the dining hall.
Yep.
And the academics
study
facility, the study hall, right? And both of those facilities are gorgeous and they're very welcoming. And so I give a lot of credit to the Florida administration for putting the resources in areas that are really impactful for athletes interacting with one another.
Yeah, that is really important because you can get pretty separate. For sure, in that situation. What were some of the first things when you got to Florida, if you can remember, just being able to build that program and get into winning, 25 SEC championships? I mean, recruiting, I remember Ari Cruz.
Ari Cruz, yes. Uh-huh.
Now, was that your first Final Four with her, Ari Cruz?
No, that was not. Crazy enough, when the backstory is I was the associate head coach at University of Kentucky. So you want to talk about the other big break in my career?
Yes.
I worked for Kathy DeBoer.
Yes.
I mean, the lessons that I learned from Kathy. That's a whole separate podcast of learning from Kathy, this brilliant mind, hardworking, just phenomenal person. Look what she did with the ABCA. Yeah. So I had, by a lucky break, when I was at Iowa State for 4 years, and then and my husband was. At that time, my fiance was coaching in Tampa, and for us to be together, because it turns out Ames and Tampa were not exactly conducive to a relationship. So when we got married, I moved to Tampa and thought, oh, this is where I'm going to start my master's now, because I hadn't. I went straight to Iowa State. So moved there in Tampa. And just a couple months later, Mark took his first head job, which was a small college in Kentucky.
There we go.
And that's where he's from. So we moved back to Kentucky. Now, Janice, at that time, the state of Kentucky did not even have a high school state tournament.
Oh, God.
The small county in which we lived in didn't even have high school volleyball. It was the most remote, isolated, little bit of a struggle, but I need to preface this to say our dearest friends in the world, that is where we met them. So I want to say that. Like what a game changer it was for us. But it got me to work for Kathy DeBoer because they asked her to take on the responsibilities of senior women's administrator. So she's going to be a head volleyball coach and the SWA. And she agreed to it if she was going to get only if she got more support staff, because at that time she only had one assistant. So she got a grad assistant. This girl. Yeah. So there it is, that lucky break. So 2 hours from where we were living was Lexington. And I commuted back and forth on the weekends or when I had a free weekend. But that time learning from Kathy was just so impactful for who I am as a person, not just as a coach. And so here I am at Kentucky. We're playing against Florida, and I see Florida with their own plane, and they're jet setting. This is before anybody had charters, and the floor that they had in the O'Connell Center, and credit Marilyn McCreevy, because she was the previous coach. Again, had such great foresight for the sport itself. And she got that all done. And so when it was the school that I always had like my dream during that time at Kentucky, I thought, I would love to be coaching at Florida. And when the job opened and I got the interview, at that time, there were two other candidates, much more successful, much more experienced than I was. But the SWA took a chance on a young female, and that's how I got that job. And so, there's a reoccurring theme in my career, and that is mentored by phenomenal women, women that took chances. Carol Dewey took a chance. Remember, I was the unskilled. I might have had, a good DNA and, I could jump or whatever, but I was so poorly skilled. And she took a chance. Then Kathy DeBoer took a chance. Then Anne-Marie Rogers, SWA at Florida, took a chance. And each time, I think it was like that, I just didn't, I wanted to prove each of them right. I didn't want to let them down. And it just sort of stayed with me. They were doing me a favor. And so my motivation was, I got paying back. I got to do right by them. And that's how I ended up at Florida. And we came in. So there were resources.
Okay.
And the day after I got the job, one of their current players, her name's Steffi Legal, from Germany, yes, she calls me and tells me about a national team teammate of hers who would be interested in coming to Florida.
Okay.
So Janice, how much skill did that take? I picked up the phone.
You're a lucky gal. I think you are so lucky. Yeah, that's great.
That's the theme of my career is just luck. And so Goody, Goody Staub, a first team All-American, I stay in touch with. Her son just stayed with us when he was visiting here this fall. That was Steffi and Goody. And that's and then there's another player who's, the luck, you're just going to keep hearing this. And I don't want to bore you or anybody listening to this.
No, this is great.
It's a series of just lucky breaks, because the second year I was there was a professor teaching on campus whose niece that summer going into my second year was like a nanny for them from Turkey. And he told me about her, and she played for the Turkish junior national team. I had no video. I made some phone calls, but it's not like you get on volumetrics and and see. And so, so we offered her a scholarship. Funny thing, back then it was 12, and currently it's still 12 today. Now, supposedly that's going to change. It may not change everywhere, but that's how long we've had 12 scholarships, which has been one of my beats.
Wow.
You truly have got to make a change. So Ayjan Gukbak, she comes, she ends up being a first team All-American. So Janice, I just had that luck of really outstanding talent. And that got us going and allowed us to get in the doors of recruits and that early success. That was, success can come early in this day and age with the portal. But back then it took lucky breaks to build a program.
Yeah, it definitely did. And, I also have to say for you, and you're talking about your luck, I think the harder you work, the luckier you are. So I'm kind of guessing that you were a pretty hard worker to have all those lucky breaks come your way, Mary.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. I'd like to think we did work hard, but it'd be disingenuous of me if I didn't acknowledge there was luck along the way.
So I'm guessing then for your administration, wow, this is real good. I'm guessing maybe some doors and some vision of possibilities of things with the sport of volleyball. Really, the light bulb may have gone off to see that happen. And that's also a pretty lucky thing to have happen.
Oh, no, absolutely. There was there's an interesting thing happened along the way, and this would have been, I'm going to say, maybe like 1992, before anybody listening was born. And we have a home match with Florida State. And it was just one of those like perfect storm in terms of attendance. We had over 7,000 come to the match. And the O'Connell Center at that time, I think the seating capacity was like 12,000, but 7,000 still looked great in there. And the Title IX committee had recognized that nomad volleyball team that was practicing in the, at 6 a.m. and moving, our standards around campus to find a place. They recognized we needed a home base. And that was how that building got built. But here's what happened. Our athletic director looked at 7,000, and because the decision, what was being decided is, do we make a separate arena, a smaller arena for volleyball where we practice and play? And I remember running into him the night after that match, and he said, why would we want to turn away that many fans? But it was an outlier. It was a one-time deal. And it not that was the only time we got to 7,000, but we didn't get to 7,000 until we played defending national championship Penn State at home, or Wisconsin 3 years ago, or Texas, the first SEC match. I mean, like the premier matches. If I could go back in time, and how do you know? You just don't know. You're doing the best, and I didn't know. I thought maybe, but what I would have done, I wish I had done, is say, let's get demand first. I think this is how Nebraska built it.
Yep.
Exactly how Nebraska built it, starting in the Coliseum. And so if we had played in a 4,000, I don't care if it had been 3,000 seat arena and had a demand and made it a tough ticket and built it that way, then moving back into the O-Dome, which is now about 10,000 seat arena. That would have been the ideal. But instead, we stayed in the O-Dome and we never created the demand. Fans would always know, you could always get a seat. They didn't have to buy their tickets early. You can always get a seat. You could walk up. So there's some marketing things I learned at that time that I wish I could have gone back and changed.
Yeah. I think Barb Hibner at Nebraska might have been the one that was kind of ruling on some of those things. It really was good for them.
And Terry Pettit gave her, I can remember multiple times giving her the credit and that foresight. And him too, obviously, what he built.
Yeah, right. Don't you just love reading what he writes?
Yes, because he's a writer who just happened to coach.
Yeah, I look for it every day, and I always find something. And his latest was a poem he put on Facebook, and it's a very interesting piece. So look him up if you guys. Terry Pettit, poems on Facebook. So let's get to that championship I was thinking about, where Ariel Cruz and you were really, 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 really good that year. Got to the finals. And you're playing against USC, Mick Haley's team. And I don't know if they had one loss. Had you had any losses that year? One.
To USC in Hawaii opening weekend.
Yeah, I watched some of that yesterday. And in there, you talked about how, if you you got to play the best to find out, how good you are. And you guys won the first set. And I think then the next three, they somehow got you. I didn't watch those. But when you think back about that match, I mean, wow, you guys were both so stacked with talent and prepared. And what do you remember?
Yeah. Well, I never, let me just go back quickly.
Yeah, sure.
In 92, we got to the Final Four, lost to the great UCLA team. And that team, you talk about a stacked team, that UCLA team was in 92 because of that talent that we had early. So that helped me prepare for getting there again. We got to the Final Four in 02, not as good a team as we had in 03. And it was in 03, we were such a good blocking team. And we were top 5 in the country in blocks per set. And in mid-October, our best blocker tears her ACL.
Okay.
That's Benavia Jenkins. She's now the head coach at UNC Charlotte. And so, but the fact that we got there without her, and that a player, her name is Michelle Chapman. Michelle's very involved with the Love Volleyball organization. She coaches a lot with USAV. Michelle, her story is phenomenal in that she played all 3 positions, left, middle, and right for us. And when Benavia went down, she's an undersized middle with a amazing motor. But we got the fact that we beat Hawaii.
Yeah, stuff to
yeah, they were really good to get to USC, and USC was so good. And I give credit to Mick Haley. He had a player. This is going to people who coach today don't have any idea how hard it was. There was very little television. One.
Yes.
We didn't share. You had no volumetrics, so you're not watching teams. Remember, Janice, how we had to you choose matches and you send VHS.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That to your opponent, and your opponent got to choose. And when the NCAA draw came out, your first round opponent, you had to exchange videotape on 2 matches. And the problem is your first round opponent. We were lucky because we were often a high seed, and that first round opponent, they might not even have had video. Yeah. It was compared to today. Yeah. And so, so USC had a great player from Mexico who did not play until mid Bibiana, Candelas, I think was her name. And so we had no video on her. We had no way to prepare. Pretty smart.
That little stinker.
Yeah. The game. And, they were so very, very talented. Yeah. It was a wonderful run by that group. That group came back this fall, and we did an anniversary celebration with them.
Oh, fun.
Yeah. And Audi Cruz played. Okay. Remember, she finished her last season playing was 2003. And she just finished playing again in the Puerto Rican Pro League.
Wow, what a career.
Will be at that age. But what's interesting, Janice, even when she was in college, she was very cognizant of taking care of her body. She was very diligent. Players at that, I may warm up and, cool down, whatever, going in the training room for... whether Audi understood at that time, that she might have a 25-year career. She's played all over the world. If she takes care of her body, I don't know, but she was so good at it, and is still playing. I got word that she's picked up the golf clubs because she.
Oh dear.
Yeah. And let me tell you, that whip of an arm might be dangerous off the tee. So how did we get there? I'm going to go back to the recurring theme of, I always believed to win a national championship, you had to have a player of the year type candidate. That you're not going to win it unless you have that special talent. And we did in Audi, but we just needed Benavia in her blocking to beat an incredibly talented USC team.
Yeah, I think that was, they had one loss that year, and I don't even know who it was to for the 2 years, because they won the championship the year before undefeated. And then that year they had only one loss. So
talented.
You know, I always said there's luck in every championship, or bad luck, and having one player out, or just, you deal with it because you have to. But I always think that there's just somewhere along the line, there's a little piece of luck that makes a difference.
You and I are talking the day after Florida men's basketball team won a national championship. And if anybody watched that, you cannot deny the luck that fell on Florida for the 2 turnovers by Houston. Florida doesn't win that except for those 2 freak turnovers. So yes, I would agree with you. Yeah. And so happy for Todd Golden, our head coach, but he broke he's the exception that makes the rule. The line that I heard early on is you have to fail at a level before you can achieve above that level. You have to fail first. And those lessons learned. And how many teams go to the Final Four and win? How many coaches go and win a national championship that first year? Todd did. He just did it last night. So he's the exception of the rule.
Oh, gosh. That was a great game, by the way. And congratulations on winning that.
Absolutely.
So I wanted to talk about a couple other things. And I know if you're okay to do this, I ran across an article that talks about a situation that you and Mark went through with tonsil cancer. Mm-hmm. This is difficult stuff anywhere, but in a situation where you're coaching a team and what's involved in athletics and what is required in that. Would you mind sharing? I think you talked a little bit about the village or the community, and this is something with the Side Out Foundation. Even is what we're working to do with volleyball, is that community to support metastatic breast cancer. I thought, wow, I didn't know that about you. I didn't know you were going through something like that at that time. But wow, that was. What a challenge. Things in life are wins and losses, and then there's wins and losses that really matter.
No, you're exactly right in terms of, I described it as the brick wall that I ran into. Life is going well. I can remember in June, we had just gotten a commitment that day. My husband, Mark, we were on vacation while I was shaving. He noticed a lump in his neck. And so as soon as we got back home, he went and had the doctor's appointment. I had the visit that morning and then ran to the hospital, and they did the biopsy. And when the oncologist came in and said it's cancer, it just knocked my world. And I didn't know anybody with tonsil cancer. This is a non-smoker. He doesn't drink alcohol. Like how does this happen? Cancer. It can happen the most randomly to anyone. And so it was, life is going great until it isn't. And the village, whether it was medically helping, we had 2 boys at home. Our eldest was a senior in college during that senior in high school in that summer. And 2 of my girlfriends actually moved him into his dorm because I couldn't leave town. The assistant coaches, Ryan Tice was on that staff at the time. Ryan now.
Okay. Yeah. Now the new head coach.
There were days I just had to run out from, so I could be with Mark when he was at his appointment. And it was it's a period of his life where he has no memory of it because of the drugs that were involved in helping him get through it. And I found myself like I just had to be so like tunnel focused of this is the team needs this piece of me. First, he needs this piece of me, then the boys, then the team, and everything else, the village. I remember the very first road trip we had that year was back, remember we had the NACWA preseason.
Yeah.
And it was at Illinois State. And I had friends from Tampa that came up and stayed with Mark. And then the next road trip, my sister flew in. Like there were so many examples. And that's how we got through it. But it was like the people in the community, the people with work, and we got through it. But boy, was it it's even hard to describe now what that was and what it meant to you, because someone told me life still goes on and you get through it. You're just going to get back to life, your regular day, and the troubles. And you think at that time, you'll always have perspective, that this time will give you perspective, but you need to be, you don't want to be reminded in a bad way, but it is the piece where reaching out to others is most important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. My sister had a deal with not tonsil cancer, but throat cancer. And it's challenging because of what's happening here, where the food and the water and everything needs to go in, and how that affects your life in such challenging ways.
Yeah. Where he lost ability to talk for weeks. A feeding tube, just things I was not familiar with. They told us it's curable, but it comes with a price. And so it was like, okay, as long as it's curable. But oh my goodness, they would have you'd hear about support groups for different kind of cancers. People get together. Being in that chemo room, we'd get in there and I'd look around and I could, who are the ones that had throat cancer because they weren't talking.
Yeah. Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, once he finished with all that, he's a basketball coach.
He's a basketball now today. He's a basketball color analyst. He works for ESPN.
Yes.
Kind of needs a voice to do that. So you can get the happy ending.
Well, that is marvelous, right?
Yeah.
Mary, there's so much about your career. When you're so busy in it, you're like working and you just don't have time to do a lot of other things. And I felt that way a little bit with my career. And, I always watched you from afar and just really was amazed at what the kind of success and the building of what you did with the program there at Florida. And it was great to hear today about Carol Dewey, about Kathy DeBoer, about these influencers that you can run across and that really make a big difference in your life. You decided to retire. Okay, I remember mine and what that was like. And when I was like, I don't know, I think there's something else for me right now. I'm not doing enough here. This isn't going to be what they're going to need in the program or in the development and everything there. And I just, there's something else that I would rather do moving forward. So for you, when this came about, you're thinking about it. I'm sure your relationship with your marriage with Mark and whatever he's doing has an impact. Your kids have an impact. Can you talk a little bit about that? We've had some big names retiring, John Cook, and just most recently, I just forgot her name.
Kirsten.
Yeah, Kirsten Booth at Creighton. Ouch. You guys are ouch to the volleyball community. What was in all that?
that line about everything has an expiration date, that was Russ Rose who said, or at least that's who I heard it from, was Russ. Yeah. But I turned 65 last summer, and I was like, I knew that eventually, because we, that there was an end point, and when was it going to be? And I had a hard time like thinking about an exit plan when I was in it. And we ask our players to be where your feet are, be all in. And I knew I had to do the same. And so I couldn't spend energy and time. Like Mark would want to, like, we really do need to talk about this. And I'd be like, no, I can't talk about it. I didn't want to do that. And so it wasn't, people ask me, did the NIL and the portal and all that? And I was like, no, because, the NIL, I went into that, like, I dove deep. I thought, okay, all these years, women athletes, they didn't get these opportunities. If there was money being paid under the table, it wasn't to the women athletes. And so now we finally have a chance. And I thought, and I embraced about women athletes could be incredible ambassadors, and it would make so much sense for companies to hire them as sponsors for sponsorship and all. And so I went all in NIL. I was going to raise as much money as possible. And we were successful there. So Janice, let me tell you what Christmas break looked like.
Okay.
From the day the portal opened, we had a visit the very next day. And every single day during that portal, except for Christmas Day, I was on the phone every day. Now, part of that is because we had the NIL monies. We had a need. I mean, it needed to be like, we needed to go get players. But I thought, oh my, usually Christmas break, you kind of catch your breath.
Yeah.
Yeah, that didn't happen.
I guess not.
And so every day, and it turned out great. It's so grateful that the players that we were able to get out of the portal. And so now it's like, okay, coming into the school year, and knowing everybody we have back, and we had some, we could be healthy. This Gator team is going to be really good. But it was almost like it took so much out of me. I wasn't able to catch my breath post the season. Then that work, and that's not. I'm not any different than any other coaches. I'm just older, than so many of the other coaches. And so as we started, and here we go, going through January, and I thought, I just don't think it's fair. The bottom line, it wouldn't be fair to the program and the staff, and specifically the players, if I couldn't give everything. Because this job, it takes a lot. And I just didn't think I had it in me. And that's what I told the players when I told them that I was going to retire, is they deserve more. They definitely deserve more. And if I didn't have it in me, then I wouldn't be doing right by them. And the players, they didn't see it coming. I didn't know that I was going to be that, it was just a few days prior that I told our administration, and, we were trying to work out the transition and all. And when I told them, and like the look on their faces, like I try not to go there, like it was just heartbreaking. But I also know athletes are resilient, and that once it passes and they're back in the gym together and they're playing the game they love, and they are so incredibly tight, it's such a wonderful group, that they're going to be fine. No one person is bigger than the program. They're going to be fine. I wanted to leave it. It was important to me that I leave it in good shape for the future. And then I was really lucky, Janice, because it was not planned initially. We planned we called it an all years reunion. We planned it months prior. And I was debating, okay, I can't announce this before the reunion, because then it'll be Mary's farewell party, and I don't want that to be the case. But then I thought, if I announce like the Monday after they were here, that wouldn't have been fair either. So we announced like on, I guess it was like a Tuesday. And then the reunion was that weekend. And we had so much fun and laughs and sharing. We had players from that first squad that 91 team, Steffi Legal, whose name I said earlier.
Yeah.
Steffi, that team was here. And all the way through to AC Fitzpatrick and Ellie McKissick, who played on this past year, and all years in between. And Janice, that is when I left of thinking, now I remember what was the best part about coaching, because you can get lost in it. It is so easy to get lost into it. But at the end of the day, it's about relationships. And that reunion helped remind me what it's all about.
I would love to see that picture.
There were a lot of pictures being taken.
Yeah.
But I don't know if we got everybody.
Sure.
But it was so much fun. Oh my God. We brought out this again. Let me give you an example of like where the assistants were like so much better than me. Dave understood the importance of history, and he gathered all the scrapbooks, because people used to make scrapbooks.
Yes.
Back in the day.
I have a bunch of those.
All right. And with photos and all, and and we put them out on tables, and those players loved going through that. And that was the fun, and seeing them interact with each other, Janice. Like when the beauty of college athletics is about the relationships that are built with teammates. And that's why I like the portal. I don't begrudge the portal. The portal is good, but man, when you've got those 4-year relationships.
Yeah.
And those players that are going to be in your weddings and the ones you're going to visit and all. And you're still going to have those relationships, if you're only at a school a year, but
it's just different.
Yeah.
I mean, 4 years is just different. Lots of things happen in life. I'm still best friends with colleagues that I played with. So they're important things.
Exactly.
Well, I'm so happy for you that you got that kind of community, or, all your players back at that time. How couldn't have worked out any better for you, I don't think.
It was pretty special. It really was. It really was.
So, Mary, what's next?
What's next is the advice that Becky Burley, our Hall of Fame soccer coach, who retired in a couple years ago, that she gave me. She gave me a lot of advice, but one of the advice that really stuck with me, she said, you're going to have more free time. People are going to ask more things of you because they feel like, Mary Wise isn't working. She's available. And her advice was, don't say yes unless it's a hell yes.
Oh, good one.
Yeah. And so, Janice, this podcast became a hell yes, because of what you all are doing and your cause. But I'm spending as much possible time with grandkids. All those opportunities that I think with my own boys, with my grandkids, Mark and I are going to take an extended 40-year anniversary trip. And then come fall, I would still like to be involved in volleyball in some capacity in terms of helping bring the sport forward. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. We are right there. We've come so far. And can I steal the line of Kathy DeBoer's?
Sure.
We built this on the backs of no one.
Yes. Yeah.
And we're still building. And so what will that look like, be it in the helping with the pro league or with the AVCA? I'm still going to give some thought to that.
Yeah.
But those will be a hell yes.
I like that. Yeah, hell yes. Good one. Breast cancer, the Side Out Foundation, when I retired, I was thinking, okay, I really want to stay connected to my volleyball people, but also do something really different that could help other folks in a different way. And so therefore I got into the Side Out Foundation and fell in love really with the mission and everything about this organization to raise money to do research on the metastatic part of the disease, to try to give people that have that more time. I guess one of the things is in talking with Carol. I do know Carol had a bout with this some time ago. And now she's trying to figure out what's going on with it now. You had cancer with Mark. In terms of breast cancer, you're around a lot of women and men too. It affects both. Has there been someone besides Carol? How's that relationship with you and what she's dealing with, especially even having come off of what you did with your husband, Mark, and going through that caregiver part of all that is amazing stuff.
And Carol was such a good resource during that time. She was living in Bloomington Normal when Mark was going through it. So I got to see her when we played in that tournament, and being able just to share what I was going through, and then talking to her, we got quite a distance, but she's still texting. And we share, I share pictures of my granddaughter. She shares picture with her great niece. And we love doing that because they're both about the same age. But under that piece of community and sharing and be open to it. But Janice, if I can tell you this story, we were doing one breast cancer awareness match, as we were calling it, in October, so, not that long ago, a few years ago. And I got a text message from a Division II coach who was in the Tampa area, who I coached against. She was a really good player, Michelle, and she reached out to me and said, hey, just want to thank you for doing this. And so I called her and I asked her, would you be willing to come talk to our team? Mm-hmm. And she said, absolutely. And so she made the trip up to Gainesville, and before the match, I had her meet with the team, and she talked to them about awareness and how important it is, early detection and being proactive and all. But she also said something, Janice, that has helped. It has stuck with me, and it has helped me in many different areas. And that is she said, when someone is going through something tough and you don't know what to say, we tend not to say anything. And she said, I would tell you, because she battled breast cancer, she said, the best advice I can give you is say something. It doesn't have to be perfect, but just show that you care by saying something. And from that, Janice, whether it is somebody who's going through something medically, or, when a colleague would be let go, when a volleyball coach would be let go, I didn't know what to say, so I wouldn't say anything. Yeah. From Michelle, I learned, and I've tried to do it since, is just shoot him a message of, I'm thinking about you. And I've tried really hard to say something. And I learned that from a woman who is a breast cancer survivor. She probably, if she beats that cancer like she beat that slide ball at Tennessee, a nasty hitter. But what a great lesson for all of us. And that's why with Carol, like reaching out, say something, and how important that is.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate everything that you've talked about here today. And I think we're going to have a lot of really great pieces here for folks to learn from and be able to use in their lives. And Mary, it's just really great to have you on. You have done such a great job there, and I wish you the very best in wherever this next part takes you. But how fun to have this second part of your career play out. But thanks for being on today.
Enjoyed it, Janice. It was great to see you. It had been a minute, hadn't it?
It had been a minute. Yes, it had.
Yeah, enjoyed it.
Well, thank you.
Thank you for listening. Please share your feedback with us at side-out.org.